Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. It is Friday, March 6, 2015, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here are tonight's top stories.
Tonight, was Netanyahu's speech a cover for executive amnesty? Then, nosy neighbors get a family hit with neglect charges. And someone finally asked Hillary about her emails. That's next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
And now the Russians have it all. Enjoy yourself, Hillary. The Russians don't appreciate the jihadis attacking them.
Well, if you are a parent, you may have had the pleasure of sending your child off to school today dressed as a character from one of their favorite books in celebration of World Book Day. Well, an 11-year-old boy from the UK caused quite a stir when he showed up to school dressed as one of the characters from the novel 50 Shades of Grey. Yes, he went to school wearing a gray suit complete with cable ties and an eye mask. And apparently his mom thought that this would be really funny. The school banned him from photographs because they said the costume was inappropriate. You think? Now, his mom said that she was more offended by other students who were dressed up as serial killers. And here she's talking about James Bond and American Sniper. Now, she's the mom of the year because she says she wouldn't have allowed her 8-year-old to dress up like that. But these 11-year-old kids, you know, they're ready for this bondage novel, apparently, because she said all the kids knew who he was. They all thought it was really funny and that it's just the school who was uptight. So I just am astonished with this story because she said all of the 11-year-old kids know who Christian Grey is from this erotic novel that basically glamorizes bondage and domestic violence. So don't children have any better books to read? Jennings, let's go back to the control room. Now, Joe Jennings, you sent your son off to school today in honor of World Book Day. What do you go as?
My son went as Galileo Galilei in full bearded garb.
And then, so is this something normal? So I guess the kids, they dress up and then they give a presentation. Would you have been okay if a student showed up ready to give a book report on 50 Shades of Grey?
Probably not. I don't think that for a 10-year-old that's appropriate.
Right. I mean, even if, I don't know how these kids are getting their hands on this book, but what do you think about what the mom said about some of the kids were dressed up like American Sniper, other ones as James Bond, and they had their toy guns. Obviously, they're in the UK. They're still allowed to bring toy guns to school, but, I mean, is it any different?
Well, I mean, my children were instructed, and the children at that school were instructed to pick historical figures. They had a list of historical figures that they had to pick out, and my son picked Galileo because he thought, wow, so cool. He discovered planets and the telescope and stuff like that. There were kids that were Washington and stuff like that. Now, maybe in the UK, they got rid of all books and they're just movie characters now. Maybe it was movie character day.
Yeah, books that have been turned into movies, which is pretty surprising because a recent study showed that kids in the UK are actually better with reading than students here in the US. So kind of surprising there that they're going that route. But, you know, meanwhile, back in America, parents are being threatened with child protective services for letting their children walk home alone from the park. Now, we've reported about this story, but now these two parents in Maryland have been charged with unsubstantiated child neglect after they allowed their 10-year-old and 6-year-old to walk home 1 mile from their local playground. Police say they were called after someone spotted the two children making their way home in December in a suburb just outside of Washington, D.C. So, what a good neighbor. Rather than keeping their eye on the kids, they call the police. Now, these charges mean that the case is going to remain in the state's database for 5 years if no further reports are added to the file. The mother, who is a science consultant and a writer, says she doesn't want there to be a file at all. They should never have been on the radar in the first place. And the parents say that they're going to refuse to allow this case to change their parenting style, which emphasizes independence and trust. And see, that's the big problem, because you can't raise your children to be independent. They have to be dependent on the state, and they can only trust the state. These parents are clearly raising domestic terrorists. Now, they say that they want to appeal, but they've been told that trying to do that could lead to escalated charges of indicated child neglect. So they're basically threatening these parents to snatch away their kids, so they're going to have to keep them locked up in their house rather than allowing them to walk home in Silver Spring, Maryland, which, from what I understand, is actually a pretty nice, affluent neighborhood. Now, some other parents there in D.C. are defying the nanny state. Police refused to lift a sledding ban. So parents there held a sled-in yesterday on America's most famous hill, that's Capitol Hill, which happens to also be a really fantastic spot for sledding. And you can see all of the pictures of that tyranny. If you go to Twitter, it's under #SledFreeOrDie. Now, the police thankfully didn't enforce this ban yesterday, but it's probably because there was cameras everywhere waiting to document if the Capitol Police whipped out their tasers to take down these domestic terrorists, all these children and their parents who were sledding in snow. But what in the world are they thinking, saying that your children belong to the state? What does that even mean? Now, kids, obviously, in the community there in Silver Spring, they don't belong to that community. The neighbor called the cops rather than keeping an eye on the kids. That's what it means when your kids belong to the state. You get the cops called on you, or you set your children up to be ripe for abuse and neglect if they get snatched away by the Child Protective Services. Now, this is according to a new report. This video is featured on Buzzsaw, which is Sean Stone's show. We've had him here today, but it's children taken away from parents by CPS are winding up in the sex trafficking trade.
In Orange County last year, they had a bust for these traffickers. They got 105 people, victims of trafficking, human trafficking. 65% of those victims were wards of Child Protective Services. Not only were they wards of Child Protective Services, but check this out, they were never reported missing.
Now, you might be saying to yourself, oh, that's just in California, or that's really outrageous, and something like that doesn't really happen that often. But there's actually an Arkansas state rep under fire this week. He's tangled up in that same sort of story. This is State Rep Justin Harris and his wife. They adopted 2 girls aged 3 and 6 from their state's Department of Human Services in 2013. He says after just a few months of dealing with some pretty severe behavioral issues of these girls, which is kind of common in newly adopted children, he said he gave them up to a trusted friend. Well, it turns out that trusted friend ended up raping the 6-year-old girl. And then after that, they then gave them to another set of parents. So this practice is known as rehoming in the adopted community and adopted children. This happens a lot, actually, and this practice is legal and it's quite simple in most states. A child's guardian can sign them over with just a simple power of attorney. So this is how they're getting tangled up in this sex trafficking. They're getting lost in the system. As you saw from that video earlier, they're not even reporting when these children go missing. A lot of times that they say, oh, well, they're 14, 15, 16, you know, they're just runaways. And so they don't report them to the state. They don't keep track of them. They don't even report them to the parents that they snatched them away from. Obviously, of course, sometimes they are taken away from really bad living situations. But in other cases, like the parents who are very good parents, they just let their kids walk home alone. If the state snatches kids away from a loving home like that and then allows them to become targeted by pimps who prey after these kids because they're not being watched after and they're being neglected by their state-appointed guardians, this is a big deal. Now, I did a report, I believe last year. It's called From Foster Care to Prostitution. Check out that video. It's even more in depth. It gets into those cases that happened in California and other states. But this is something that is a big deal. It is going on, and it's being aided and abetted through very high political offices and police and your local law enforcement and all of that. But you need to check it out and do something about it, and at least find out what your elected representatives are doing to, keep track of the kids that are in the system and making sure that CPS is recording. Child Protective Services has the authority to snatch your children directly from your home, a lot of times just arbitrarily over an ego trip. Families might not have the means to fight back against these agencies. So the least that we can do is hold these agencies accountable. Now, do you remember this week when House Majority Speaker John Boehner decided to flip-flop and hand over a nice, clean DHS funding bill, effectively leaving Obama's executive amnesty untouched? Well, don't remember that? Well, that means you were probably just watching the mainstream media, which chose to focus over and over again on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech before Congress, his nothing new speech that they played again and again and talked about for days. And that was the plan. Now, this is according to Politico. Boehner secretly negotiated with Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi for days leading up to this flip-flop decision, and that includes a pre-hashed out deal to use the hoopla surrounding Netanyahu's Tuesday address as kind of a cover-up, political cover-up, so they could sneak through this extraordinarily controversial vote. Boehner's office continues to deny that any such deal took place. Now, of course, at first glance, this looks like, just utter incompetence on the part of the Republican Party, because even as the majority there, they can't get anything done. But what this really proves is that they never intended to follow through and make good on their campaign promises in the first place, because they had already caved and gave the Democrats everything that they wanted, allowing the government to be funded through the fiscal year 2015, exactly as the Democrats put in place. And this supposed DHS funding bill was going to be their one, card that they would hold. And here we have Boehner quietly flip-flopping. There was no fight put up at all. And Drudge Report actually had an article out today that said Boehner has more allies on the Democratic Party there now than he does on the Republican side. So he's a very effective, controlled opposition. Now, here's one of the reasons why they might want to keep this a little bit hush-hush. Now, we reported that these newly documented illegal immigrants that are, going to be taking advantage of executive amnesty, they are going to be able to take advantage of a tax loophole to get benefits for the previous 3 years, even though they didn't have a Social Security number. McClatchy, D.C. is now putting an exclamation point on that. They are reporting that President Barack Obama's executive order on immigration could mean refund checks for those who were in the U.S. illegally to the tune of $1.7 billion taxpayer dollars. $1.7 billion over the next 10 years that they are just giving away to people who did not pay into the system. And they'll be able to take advantage of that. So absolutely no accountability. And of course, no one's talking about that really in the mainstream media, because they are regurgitating the same speech that they're also saying in the same sentence is nothing new. Now, it's kind of like this whole Hillary Clinton email scandal. Of course, her scandals are nothing new, but the media has circled the wagons like they normally do to protect Hillary Clinton, saying she didn't break the law by using her private email, and everybody's doing it. And that's where they're really just going out and pointing out everyone that uses their private email. Well, now a former ambassador to Clinton's State Department says that he was fired for doing just that. This is former U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Scott Gratian, and he told the Daily Caller that Hillary Clinton's chief of staff fired him based on an inspector general's report, which found, among other things, that he routinely used an unauthorized email account to conduct official government business. Now, the report says that using outside email didn't adhere to department regulations and government information security standards. And the report goes on to specifically say that the use of commercial email accounts increases the risk for data loss, phishing, and spoofing of email accounts, as well as inadequate protections for personally identifiable information. So clearly, there is a double standard here because during the whole 4 years of her tenure as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton used a private email account to conduct all of her official and personal business. And get this, the White House, once again, the spokesperson says, you know, I don't think that Obama really found out about this until he read it in the paper. Oh my gosh, how many times have they said that Obama didn't know about it until he learned about it from the media? This is Obama, who was elected largely on his internet prowess. He didn't ever receive an email from the secretary there in the State Department. Like, I'm totally not buying it. But here's a question. Do you think this whole email scandal is going to ruin Hillary's chances in 2016? Well, let's ask the White House spokesperson.
When personal email is used for official government business, it's required for that personal email to be stored, properly maintained, and preserved at the agency. And that, according to President Clinton's team, is exactly what they did. Which would
years later. Yeah.
So do you think that was a Freudian slip, or are they ready for Hillary, trying to get us all ready for Hillary? Now, Clinton has only sent out one tweet addressing this whole email scandal. Their theory is that her late Wednesday tweet asking the State Department to release the 55,000 pages of emails that she provided to the agency would start to calm the media and all the political tempest, while giving her spokesman an easy answer to many journalists' questions. Ask State. Her Democratic strategist said, it makes sense to settle in a little bit. People have very short memories. But you know what doesn't have a very short memory is the internet, and we will never forget. Now, that's the big question, though, is where is the media? Obviously, some people are kind of talking about it on the news here and there a little bit, and of course, you know, we're going to give kudos to that reporter that really went after the House spokesperson there. But why hasn't anyone actually specifically asked Clinton? We didn't even really have any media attacking her one single tweet on Twitter. No media is demanding that she answer this now. They're just pointing out how everybody uses a personal email, basically pointing out how everyone there is breaking the law and that they're all criminals. But Hillary is, you know, the next future presidential candidate. Everyone's talking about her. So we really need to be asking these tough questions. But where is the media, right? Why aren't they doing their job? Now, she is going to be the keynote speaker at the aptly named Excellence in Journalism celebration, but she's not going to be answering any questions for reporters. So basically, she's just going to be given a keynote speaker. She's going to be given the opportunity to say her piece right in front of her prime audience, and they're all just going to be instructed to just bow down and not ask her any questions, you know, about her possible presidential run. So far, the only media outlet that has even sent a reporter to go and stalk Clinton and ask her about these emails is TMZ. TMZ is like a paparazzi news site. They stalk celebrities. And they're the only ones that thought to go to the airport and get her when she's flying in. This reporter here asks her about the email, and she just smiles. She refuses to answer. And so that video is not even being looped on the media over and over again, just showing how Hillary is refusing to talk about this email scandal. Yesterday, a political writer declared Biden should run now. Should run now because this is the only way to know what Hillary is willing to risk. Hello, I'm sorry, but Hillary is willing to risk everything. She already has. We got Watergate, Travelgate, Emailgate, foreign contributions, Benghazi. But enough about her. John Bowne is going to get down and dirty and talk about another future presidential hopeful. This guy, he really wants to see Joe Biden run, so we're going to give him a little bit of that future presidential treatment.
Stuffed shirt political Yahoo writer Matt Bai has declared that Biden should run now because it's the only way to know what Hillary is willing to risk.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
Mr. Bai, Hillary is willing to risk everything. She already has.
The secret White House email account.
Whitewater, Travelgate, Filegate, Chinagate, Benghazi.
What difference at this point does it make?
Self-respect.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Bai begins his ivory tower indoctrination with his full frontal assault on the stupidity of the slumbering masses of American voters. It's doubtful that many voters care as much about Hillary Clinton's State Department emails as reporters do. They're probably not too wound up over the foreign contributions flowing into her family foundation either. Mr. Bai, voters are concerned. The Quinnipiac poll isn't going to tell you anything when she is the only candidate. Just take a gander at any of the 8,038 angry comments responding to your elitist swill of an article. Since there are so many, here's one from 22 minutes ago. John writes, illegal email accounts, illegal fundraising. Why should we care about that? It's only nitpicky reporters pointing out the transgressions. I mean, we have a current president that uses the Constitution as toilet paper. So why should we expect any presidential candidates to follow the law? I need to remind you that we are talking about Democrat candidates. Republicans can be vilified for 30-year-old supposedly unpaid parking tickets or for knowing a guy who knows a guy that knows a guy that is off color. Matt Bai's byline should read DNC hack. But enough about the comments and Hillary. Let's get down to anointing his supreme eminence, Vice President Joe Biden.
Neil Smith, old buddy, are you here, Neil? Neil, I miss you.
The creepy, plagiarizing liar hovering over what's left of our Bill of Rights. Mr. Bai continues, Biden has a well-known tendency to get caught up in the moment and say things that are impolitic or even partly untrue, which in Washington tends to make you a figure of ridicule, though in most other places it's known as having a pulse.
But this standard is not a measure of how we can evaluate the condition of our society. It cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
This is how it sounded when Robert Kennedy said those words in 1968.
Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
There was more. A videotape caught Biden at a neighborhood coffee in New Hampshire making exaggerated claims about his college record.
Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class.
In fact, as Biden finally conceded, he finished near the bottom of his class.
Mr. Bai, what other places? Hell? Shouldn't that statement be the other way around? Biden once claimed almost exactly what Brian Williams is sitting at home drinking beers on his lonesome couch for. Bai continues. Biden's a middle-class champion who makes the case for economic fairness with more conviction than Clinton and less vitriol than Warren. He's a serious thinker on foreign policy who opposes rampant interventionism without sounding like a pacifist.
How they can justify raising taxes in the middle class that's been buried the last 4 years. How in Lord's name can they justify raising their taxes with these tax cuts?
Vice President Biden just today said that the middle class over the last 4 years has been, quote, buried. We agree.
Bai ends with pure sycophantic glorification. I'm in it to win it, was Hillary's garish bumper sticker when she entered the 2008 race. Her party deserves to know that she isn't running again just because her path is clear, and Joe Biden has more than earned the right to stand in it. He's earned the right to stand in something else.
In time, democracy can be delivered to the Ukrainian people.
Joe Biden's son accepted a position with the Ukrainian gas company as private citizen, and his dad does not endorse it. I mean, this is just So outrageous that the globalists are involved overthrowing Ukraine, and then they would put his son in as one of the top executives to rake in just unbelievable amounts of money. And then they criticize Putin for being involved in the government investments. Yeah, it's wrong. And it's just openly done. And now we just accept the governing class will own the state-controlled blocks and make billions of dollars and just laugh at us. And that's not an economy based on products. It's not, or on innovation. It's based on Joe Biden's smiley-faced son. I mean, I look at him and he makes me sick. And communism doesn't exist, folks. It's just a thug system where you tell the general public, oh, you're going to share all the things and we're going to get the rich people. And they go rob the nouveau riche. They go rob the real producers, who I'm sure aren't perfect in most countries. And they replace it with something 100 times worse.
The 2016 presidential election is shambling down the old spy grid, inebriated on false promises that deliver high premiums. Meanwhile, President Two-Face has crowned his cranium with his pen, phone, and our tax dollars as China and Russia ditch the dollar our grandparents fought to make almighty. America is on life support. We need a real American to stand up and take the reins.
Give me another good reason why you shouldn't run.
I can't.
Yeah?
There may be reasons I don't run, but there's no obvious reason for me why I think I should not run.
John Bound for NoWorldOrder.com.
The knowledge of the ancients, tried and true, trusted herbs and extracts fused with the latest nutraceutical science. Introducing the all-new Ancient Defense Herbal Immunity Blend, crafted with over 14 key ancient herbs and extracts to supercharge and prepare your body for what experts admit is the most dangerous season of the year. We have rejected hundreds of other formulations in our quest to bring you what is simply the most powerful and comprehensive proprietary formula that we have ever created in the realm of herbal immunity. For the last 2 years, our team has been working with top doctors, nutritionists, and chemists to develop the ultimate nutraceutical formulation. Experience the benefits of combining over 14 ancient herbs and extracts with exciting new advances in nutraceutical science. For a limited time, get 25% off on this introductory offer. Visit ancientdefense.com or call 888-253-3139. ancientdefense.com. Used since before the days of the Roman Empire to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfoWarsLife.com oil of oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients, extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules. You will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
USA Today reported that a dangerous, often deadly type of bacteria that lives in soil and water has been released from a high-security lab at Tulane National Primate Research Center in Louisiana. Now, officials say there is no risk to the public. There is never a case where there is no risk. The risk may be low, but it's still there. And this is a very deadly bacteria. This is one of the bacteria that is classified by the CDC as a select agent. That means that it has potential to be weaponized. That and its connection with Tulane University ought to make us concerned. But listen to how this got out. Listen to the sloppy work that was done at the lab. They say the fact that they can't identify how this release occurred is very concerning, said a biosafety expert from Rutgers. He testified before Congress just last summer in the wake of lab incidents at federal agencies involving anthrax, smallpox, and a deadly strain of avian influenza. And yet, we're supposed to be concerned about the people who don't get vaccinated. They're the threat to us, not the people who are carelessly, recklessly experimenting with these kind of dangerous things like smallpox, anthrax, a deadly strain of bird influenza. They're using this to weaponize it. But that was not what they said they were doing at Tulane University. They were creating a vaccine for something that is only endemic in Thailand. It has been found in Australia. In Australia, it has a 20% mortality rate. Where it's endemic in Thailand, it has a 50% mortality rate. Compare that to measles, for which they are demanding that we give up our right to informed consent, demonizing parents who decide that they want to vaccinate gradually or not vaccinate at all. Measles has a 0.1%, 0.1% mortality rate. That's 1/10 of 1%. This particular disease that they carelessly let out at Tulane has a 500 times greater mortality rate than measles. Do you see anybody in the mainstream press concerned about this? Do you see them calling for mandates to control this kind of bioweapons experimentation, bringing in dangerous diseases that are not endemic in the United States in order to make weapons out of them so they can then sell us vaccines that they create so they can then force us to take those vaccines? Listen to how this thing got out. This is a story that's been developing since last November. First, there were 2 monkeys that showed signs of infection. February 22nd, they just put down the second monkey that came down with this. They thought they had cured it, but it came back. Now, these 2 monkeys that came down with the disease were outside of the level 3 biosafety lab. That's a biosafety lab that's next to the highest level of biosafety. They have negative air pressure, a lot of controls. They said no animals come out of that area alive. So they were very surprised to see monkeys outside of the labs come down with this disease, especially the fact that these monkeys were in separate cages outside. Even more important is the fact that these cages each are about half the size of a football field. So it covers a fairly large area. They were very concerned because Tulane University said, well, we've done some preliminary testing and we don't see anything. They need to do over the area of just one of those cages 100 samples at least. So they should have taken 200 samples of the soil. They only took 4. That's the kind of level of care. Yet we shouldn't be concerned, and the media certainly is not concerned, about the release of these bacteria at Tulane. No, we need to be concerned about the people who don't get their kids vaccinated for measles. USA Today reports the time between exposure to this bacteria and the development of symptoms can range from 1 day to many years. According to the CDC, though, most human infections do not cause symptoms. That should not make us feel better. The fact that it is asymptomatic, which means that you don't show symptoms but you can still spread it to others, is very concerning. That makes it even more dangerous. They go on to say several countries have studied using the bacteria as a bioweapon because strains can be obtained from the environment and engineered to be resistant to multiple antibiotics. It's also significant that this was Tulane University. It was just last August as we were seeing the beginnings of the giant Ebola outbreak in Africa. What are the U.S. biowar researchers doing in the Ebola zone? And these bioweapons researchers were from Tulane University. The same people that just brought this bacteria from Thailand here so they could weaponize it, so they could make a vaccine for it, and then accidentally released it into the environment. Whoops. They were accused of doing the same thing at the beginning of the Ebola outbreak. This began in Sierra Leone. It is still raging in Sierra Leone. It is the only country that hasn't gotten it under control yet. The vice president was just quarantined last week for Ebola. They demanded Tulane get out of the country. They were very concerned. They believed they had something to do with the outbreak of Ebola. Was it carelessness like we see here in Louisiana? Or was it deliberate? For InfoWars Nightly News, I'm David Knight.
A another major health threat, this one in Toledo, Ohio, where everybody in the entire city has been told not to drink the water.
Ohio's governor declaring a state of emergency.
Did you know that the average person uses about 80 to 100 gallons of water at home every single day? If there's a water emergency, will you be prepared?
Panicked residents forming long lines throughout the day.
We're here at a supermarket in Toledo. You can see the shelves empty where water once was.
To stay safe and healthy during a crisis, you must have access to safe, clean water. Water which will not be available at your local grocery store.
There's a mad dash on right now to stock up on supplies.
The ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system is a must-have for every modern, independently minded household. Protect your family's safety during an emergency. Go to InfoWarsStore.com today to purchase your ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system or call 1-888-253-3139.
Introducing Secret 12, the new InfoWars Life vitamin B12 formulation. Most forms of vitamin B12 are highly processed and synthetic and could not be properly absorbed by the body. That's why for real results, so many are having to turn to painful B12 injections, which are known to have higher absorption rates. Now, InfoWarsLife.com is excited to announce that we can bring you our most bioactive, powerful form of B12 that has been developed with our exclusive perfected process. Secret 12 is a binary of nutramedical grade, bioavailable coenzyme forms of B12, methylcobalamin, the same kind used in B12 injections, and adenosylcobalamin. Secret 12 is simply taken by mouth, right on the tongue, and then swallowed. No needles, no injections. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Discover the secret. Secret 12. Secure your revolutionary Secret 12 formula right now at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
He escaped South American native tribes using them. He fought Nazi strongmen on top of them. And now actor Harrison Ford, aka Han Solo, Indiana Jones, and Jack Ryan, has crash landed a prop plane on a golf course, and he survived and nearly walked away.
Stay sharp, there's 2 more coming in. They're gonna try and cut us off. Besides, I know a few maneuvers, we'll lose them.
Rob Dew reporting for InfoWars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. That's right, yesterday on March 5th, 2015, Harrison Ford took off in his Ryan PT-22 plane, which is a 2-place open cockpit trainer plane manufactured during World War II to train U.S. military pilots. It was built in 1942 and has a 160 horsepower radial engine and a top speed of 131 miles an hour. It was retired by the military after the war. Immediately upon takeoff, Ford had engine trouble and had to immediately make a U-turn and turn around back to the airport. Unfortunately, he didn't make it that far. As you can see, he crashed on the 8th hole of the Pinmar Golf Course near Santa Monica Airport.
53178, engine failure, immediate return.
Ryan 178, runway 21, clear to land.
Witnesses say he made a nosedive on the 8th hole tee and proceeded to glide into a crash landing. And I've got to say, when you take an aerial look over where he crashed, had he not made it to the golf course, he could have easily crashed into a number of houses and most likely died. We've seen plenty of plane crashes out there where small prop planes crash into houses and nobody makes it out. So he was very lucky in this regard.
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds. Unfortunately, his cockpit was not made of carbonite.
Oh, they've encased him in carbonite. He should be quite well protected. If he survived the freezing process, that is.
Well, Calrissian, did he survive?
He was pulled from the crash by several golfers, luckily one of which was a surgeon. He had a cut in his face that was very deep. Witnesses say a swath of skin was missing and there was blood dripping down his face. He was taken to UCLA Medical Center in critical condition, but has since been upgraded to moderate. His son Ben tweeted this: "At the hospital, Dad is okay, battered but okay. He is every bit the man you would think he is. He is an incredibly strong man."
Great. Well, it's still off maneuver. Take evasive action.
Ford's quick thinking and abilities reminded me of another plane crash that happened back in 2009 in January, and that was that of Captain Sully Sullenberg. He made a crash landing into the Hudson River after experiencing engine trouble. His quick thinking and training allowed Sullenberg to make a picture-perfect landing on the Hudson River with 155 souls on board. His landing was touted as a miracle. But I don't think it was a miracle. It was luck. And what is luck? Luck is the intersection of preparation and timing. And that's what you have to ask yourself out there. Are you prepared in life? Are you a concealed carry handgun owner who maybe will be in the right place at the right time when somebody decides to go on a crazy shooting rampage? Are you prepared if the stock market crashes? Are you prepared if society breaks down and there's riots? What are you doing in life? Are you awake? These two men are examples of people who are awake and prepared. And with luck and a little bit of preparation and timing, they were able to both make the best out of a bad situation. The world's going through a lot of changes right now and sides are being drawn. Are you going to be on the side of freedom and individual liberty or on the side of a collectivist, politically correct tyranny? Remember stories like these that showcase the dynamic, quick-thinking, prepared human spirit that refuses to submit. This is Rob Dew reporting for Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. If you are watching this report on YouTube, please consider becoming a member of PrisonPlanet.tv. Your username can be shared with up to 20 people. That's 20 InfoWarriors for the price of one. And if you are a member of PrisonPlanet.tv, may the force be with you.
I have you now. What?
Yahoo! You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
That's it for the show tonight. Be sure to tune in Monday at 7 p.m. Central. And in the meantime, head over to PrisonPlanet.tv and pick up a subscription. Your username and password can be shared with up to 20 people at the same time. You're getting instant access to over 18 years worth of content. Check it out.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. And your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.